And the Komets certainly need those close games at this point. Right now, looking at the 8th seed, they're in the 8th slot, but only a couple points, I want to say 3 behind Dayton.
2 games in hand.
And 2 games in
which
hand.
If they win them.
Right, so they've got a little more room to make up some of those points.
They got the home schedule, too. They have 6 out of the 8 at home. The other games are at Evansville and at Bloomington, which is next Tuesday, which is a game that was rescheduled, so don't forget that one. And, I mean, they have an opportunity here to get hot.
And one guy that they need, and we don't know if they're going to have him, and you know the most about the situation, Frankie DeAngelis, the team's only All-Star, up for Defensive Player of the Year in the CHL. Talk about where he is with his concussion scenario.
Well, nobody's talked to him. He did not make the trip this weekend, but as of late last week, he was getting headaches when he was going for a walk. So he's at least, I would guess, at least 2 weeks away. The Komets are, I don't know that they're counting on getting Frankie back in time for the they're hoping to get him back for the playoffs. They're not counting on him for the rest of the regular season. They've learned over the years you just don't mess with concussions, and they'll just wait and see. But to me, Frankie has been the team's MVP. I mean, this last stretch, when they're 2-3-2, it's when he's been hurt, and their power play has absolutely fallen apart. It's when he's been hurt. I think Frankie has been the most consistent player from the beginning of the season to now when he got hurt. And he's been the most consistent player effort-wise pretty much every night.
And you mentioned Dan LaPointe playing pretty well in terms of plus-minus. Where's he at with his deep bone bruise, and also where's Artem?
Artem has had a filling fall out, and he had some infection get into his tooth, so he got that. They were taking a look at that today. They're gonna, nobody knows what the situation is until probably game time Wednesday for both of these guys. Danny's got a thigh bruise that he played through on Saturday night. They're hoping he can go Wednesday, but it wouldn't shock you if he had to sit a little bit. We'll just have to wait and see. I would guess that they'll probably stick with the same lineup they've had this weekend. They'll play with that on Wednesday.
And you mentioned in your blog Justin Hodgman. The Komets really haven't had any contact because he's the guy that they've brought in kind of as the assassin late in the season the past few years. But they do have an opportunity when the playoffs start to bring in 2 amateur players. At this point, have they started looking at guys? Because those are guys, they're not going to play in the regular season, just in the playoffs, and they don't count against the 19 men on the roster, correct?
Right. And I think it's a really tough rule because it works positive and negatively because you can't, it doesn't do you any good to bring them in ahead of time because they're not going to play. Now, but it also allows maybe some better players to be available later when their teams are done in the NCAA playoffs and all that too. So there's a chance there. So they're looking at a couple guys. I would imagine they're not talking about specifics, but I would imagine 1 defenseman and 1 forward. And then they'll see what they can get. They've got enough offensive defensemen, I think, especially if Frankie can come back. I would think they'd look for more of a defensive guy. For the blue line, for the defenseman, and up front, you got to get a power forward. I mean, those are the hardest guys to find, and so that's what they need there. But we'll see.
And to wrap this up, you talked to Al today, and was it David Franke?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you've talked to them today. They're not used to being in this position.
Oh no, they're not happy.
I was going to say, what is their outlook or the way they feel or view this season, especially at this point, because they're used to winning Turner Cups and being in the top half of any standings. Well,
both of them have been around long enough that they've seen seasons like this get turned around, possibly. If you remember 92, 93, it wasn't until they got hot at the end of the year that they really got hot and they carried that through the playoffs. 93, 94, same thing. They got all the way to the finals. So they know it can happen, so they're not ready to tear things apart right this second. I mean, they're still hopeful, but they're also realistic. Mm-hmm. I don't think anybody has doubted that the individual talent has been here from the start of the season. They made the changes. They brought in 10, 11, 12 guys now since training camp. They went out and got Tab Lardner, and they got Dustin Molly, and they've gotten guys like that. They got John Morasti. It's like the pieces are there. It's can the coaching and the players themselves put it all together into one thing. I mean, if they were if they go in on a hot streak, I don't think anybody would want to play them. Not necessarily because they've got a chance to win it all or whatever, but this is a team that's won 3 championships. They've got a goalie who's won 3 championships. They have the experienced players who've been there, done that, who aren't going to get flustered playing on the road. They are still a dangerous team. Now, can they win it all? Probably not. But it wouldn't shock you if they got to the finals again. I mean, I think that's the problem this year, is nothing would surprise you out of this team. I mean, they could be either really good or they could be really bad. They've been both. It's just a mystery.
And no surprises, we will be back next week talking about 4 games in a big week. The Mudbugs playing 2 of them here in Fort Wayne on Wednesday and on Friday night. Alongside Blake, I'm Glenn. Hopefully we'll have a real positive week of hockey and more highlights to talk about next week. Anything you want to add, Blake?
Nope. It's time to get it going, though.
All right. We shall see. Thanks for logging on to Wayne.com.